When my sons were younger, I used to read them from a book series called Choose Your Own Adventure. And I like those stories because at the end of every chapter, there would be a decision point. Did the character decide to do this, or did the character decide to do that? And this or that would direct you then to another page in the book. And eventually, after a series of this or that questions, you would end up at the conclusion of the story, which would have a very different outcome depending on what those cumulative choices meant. Choose your own adventure. And I often think of that because recently I've had to be reminded of choose your own adventure. And here's a couple of stories that happened to me recently. 1, 2, 3, bing, bang, boom, snap, crackle, pop, that drove this point home for me because as I get into my senior years, we always talk about that, but I don't like to clarify that too hard. I've lived a long life. I've had a lot of ups and downs, and I've chosen my own adventure. And I've had opportunities to go left, right, this way or that way. But my story has brought me to this point. And I have to say that I feel pretty good and peaceful with this point in my life, and I feel determined to protect that. I have a couple founding principles, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But first, I'd like to tell you 3 recent events, all happened within 1 week, that really drove that point home to me, that choose your own adventure, and how we can take, at times, somebody else's adventures, jump into their story, and be a little too enthusiastic where their story then becomes our story without us ever even realizing what happened. And it can jeopardize the peace that we've already worked so hard to have. And the first story, this is a young neighbor of ours who has a little horse, and he came over to our place the other day and he asked if he could ride his horse on our woodland property. And I said, yes, but let's take a little ride together. He's 14 years old, just turned 14, and this little horse of his was awesome. It did anything he wanted, and he had said that it was only 5 years old. He had bought it as a green horse, and he had trained it using YouTube videos of all things. And I was so impressed, and I really appreciated my little time that I had spent with him. And so I said, yes, after this ride, I see that you know the trails a little bit here, and I would be fine for you to ride. And over the next couple of days, couple of weeks actually, I found that he was popping up more. He would send me a text, I'm going for a ride. And then I wanted to introduce him to some friends that I had that could give him maybe a couple of pointers on horseback, some free lessons. Yes, free lessons. And then I noticed that his boots needed replacing, and I could tell that his family, which was obvious, was under some financial stress. So I had these great boots of all sizes, size 12, and this is this boy's foot, practically brand new. And so I gave him the boots. I asked him that I might ask for a few chores in return. I haven't done that so far. But as my friendship very quickly deepened into a realization that this boy's family was struggling, you could see that. His horse had an injury, and I went over to help him out with the injury, some bleeding in his foot. And I saw firsthand some of the struggles that they were having. Well, last week he comes to my place and he asked if I could take care of his horse for him. Could he bring it to our property and keep it here? Of course, my first instinct is, of course, there's always room for one more. I asked, well, why have you lost the home where your horse is currently at? Right across the street from him. Perfect place. Perfect. And he said the man had asked him to do some chores and that he felt that he wasn't doing the chores as quickly and in the way that he wanted. And he had asked him to leave. So basically the boy wore out his welcome. And I was glad to help. But that evening, something felt a little more unsettled. Because what's the long-term responsibility of taking in another horse? What if the horse needs vet care and his family can't afford it? What if the boy during school years and it gets dark, earlier? What if he doesn't show up and I've got a horse out there that I'm just taking care of every day? And I don't believe that there would be any compensation that I could ask for that this family could afford. That was my impression. So the next day I returned to his place and I said, I had spoken too soon and that it was not a good idea for me to take his horse in. And at that point, I saw that his family, I was able to see where he had moved his horse to, his backyard, a makeshift little fence. And along with some other animals, I thought, okay, with some elbow grease, he can make this work. And so I left. A couple days later, something else came back to haunt me. And it was a posting on Facebook where 38 yearlings had been taken to auction and were unwanted and unsold. And my one friend, who goes to the auctions quite regularly, had put out a request for, can't anybody do something? Can't we save these little, let's all pull together and do something. And I got swept up in it. I thought, one more horse. A yearling, okay. Needs gelded, okay. Probably some vet help. It looks kind of thin. Untrained. Sandy, look at your age. Look at the responsibilities you already have, and look at the pressure that this could bring to you. And really think about this hard. And so what I decided to do was pull back. And lo and behold, she found a good group of people that moved in, and benefactors, and people just swooped in, and they seemed to take care of it. And I felt, okay, I'm off the hook. I don't have to pursue this any further. Well, a post came up yesterday and said that one of the benefactors had dropped out. There was 5 remaining horses, little yearlings, all needed gelding, all little stallions, that unless she could find a home for them very quickly, this was on a Wednesday, unless she could find them a home by Sunday night, they were leaving back to auction. One of them is blind in one eye. And then, of course, I had to go through the whole decision process again. And I texted her privately and I said, could I come out and see them? And she said, when? And I said, today, tomorrow. And I didn't hear anything back. Okay, she's stressed. She's got a lot going on. I'm sure I'm not the only one. So I decided that on my own Facebook page, I put a post on telling the story as I knew it, and seeing if I could rally up some interest and see what I could get going for her. And I private messaged my friend back and I said, here's what I've done. And she appeared to be somewhat a little resistant to maybe my narration of her story. And I could tell that she had a storyline that she was trying to control, and that maybe I had interfered with that. So I said, that's fine. I just made a comment and I said, if I've overstepped, I'll give them a direct link to you, which I did. And I heard nothing back. And I still haven't heard anything back. So here's the thing. All in this same week period, another very close friend of mine from childhood asked for money. Another crisis, another drama, to a long series in our relationship of traumas and dramas, and I need money. Now, this person hadn't asked money in a long time, and I had tried to put my foot down that the last time, which was several years ago, was the last time. And I worked very hard to reset my relationship with this person, not to be a creditor relationship, but to be a friend, where we are equals, adults, sharing our adventures and encouraging each other and supporting each other where we can, but without having the imbalanced relationship if I have money and you don't. Well, I don't have that much money. Let's get that clear. And so I said no. Well, yesterday I also sent a little message to my friend with a horse, and I said, how are you doing? How's your horse doing? I have not heard anything back. The friend that I was trying to help her find a home for these horses by this weekend, I have not heard anything back. And the friend that I said no to, who wanted money, while I sent a very small token of money to help where it might, I've not heard anything back. And so here's the deal. Choose your own adventure. Here, I felt, because I love these people, I want to help. They're part of my social community. And I feel like I know how to help and I can help, and there's ways to help, and surely there's something I can do. I realized that I was getting drawn into somebody else's adventure. Excuse me, my dog's barking. So let's go back to choose your own adventure. I realized that for some reason, Their adventure was becoming my adventure very quickly. And the moment that I didn't go along with their choices, I found that the story led me to a different place. I was on the outside. It led to silence and distance. And you know what? I understand that. More barking. So the perception that people have of us can be that we have deep pockets. Well, in my case, if it appears that way, it's not true. But I don't talk about money, I don't complain about money, and I pay our bills on time. My husband and I have just made that as the way we live. We live within our means. And there's certain things we're extravagant about, having these animals for one, but there's other ways that we cut corners and that we are not extravagant. Those are choices that we have made, and we have made those choices together with each other's full support. Other people may not see that. Other people see what they want to see. Other people, it's like a drowning person. Sometimes you can throw them a rescue, what do you call that? A rescue tube where you can jump in to try to save them. And in their panic, they will push you down and drown you right with them because they're scared. They're not thinking. And at this point, they're in survival mode. So when does somebody else's rescue, when does somebody else drowning become your problem? And how many drowning people can we save? How many animals can we rescue? Well, for each of us, that answer is different. And for each of us, we save and rescue according to our capabilities and the resources that we have. We choose our own adventure, and sometimes when we see something that is dysfunctional or that maybe needs a little tougher road, and that our interception or our intervention can be a form of enabling, or maybe it's just that we just can't fix it, and it's time to step back. Not easy. Not easy, and so that's what happened here. I stepped back and I was shut out. For now. I don't think that I've lost these friendships, but I think that these friendships are going through a reset. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Because I've found that they're, for me, and I don't know what those are for you, foundational principles. Number one, I love where we live. I want to take care of it. It requires a lot of repair and maintenance. It's not an easy place, and all of that takes money, time, and attention. I love my husband, and I wouldn't do anything that would be a direction or a choice that would divide us. I'm not going to do that. And so whatever adventure we take it on together. I love these animals. If they need vet care or they need food, they've lived their life knowing that they can count on me and my husband to write the check and take care of it. And I love my son and his family, the grandchildren. I would do anything for them to help them stay secure and to give them the support that only parents and grandparents can do sometimes. Those are my founding principles. So anytime that I have a choice of choose your own adventure, I choose those things. And it may be uncomfortable, but in some ways to clarify that is quite liberating, because you know that even though you might have disappointed someone else, you've kept true to yourself, and you've kept true to everything that you know is right for you and your family and your peace. At our age, there's only so much of us. We have a certain amount of resources. I'm not going to go out and make millions of dollars. I'm not doing anything that would even make that happen. So what we have is what we have. I'm not going to get any younger. Hey, look, I don't know how much runway I have left, but I'm sure there's a timeline. While we all don't know what that timeline is, the older you get, the one thing you do know is you're in your senior years, and that can mean some very unexpected surprises. And you have to be prepared and make plans and arrangements for that to happen. If we can't mow the property, do we have to pay someone else to take care of it? If I can't feed the horses, do I have to pay somebody else to come in and take care of it? If it came to that, would we have to sell, and where would we go? All the uncertain things that we all face. So right now I'm speaking to all of you who are put in those situations where you're being pulled into a circumstance that you cannot control, you did not create, and that perhaps you have some ability to have an empathetic or compassionate response to. Go for it. But go for it in a way that it does not jeopardize your own adventure, your own plan, your own values, and your own security. We're going to talk more about this over time because I'm not through working through it. And who knows, maybe tomorrow I'll get a call from that neighbor. Maybe that woman who's rescuing horses will reach out in a different way. And maybe the friend that's ghosting me now because I didn't lend them any money or as much as they wanted, maybe I'll hear from them. I suspect that I will. And until then, hey, I've chosen my own adventure. Look. Sometimes this is as good as it gets.